just gonna kind of, let it marinate for a little bit, let some people get in here, because I really want to lay this down, man. I'm hoping Doomy's out there right now, because man, this is gonna be a noteworthy one, right? I got my coffee. I got YouTube stream already going. Got TikTok already going. Let's make sure my live is going on here and what this is looking like. Always takes YouTube like a minute before it's like, yeah, there it is. Now I'm live. Okay. I gotta monitor my chats. Like, I feel like there's a more efficient way to be monitoring my chats, but I don't know what it is. So whatever. So I'm here and I'm live, and I might as well just turn that Facebook thing on. I don't know if Facebook actually does anything, but I'm going to turn it on. You know what? Do I even want to? I don't know. I think I'm not even going to mess with it right now. Right? So it's good. Okay. But here's the thing. I wanted to talk about the House of Dragons and focus on the dragons. Like, actually focus on the dragons. Because I don't think there's been enough actual conversation about what these dragons actually do, like what they're actually capable of. Hang on a sec. Let me cut this off here. I don't want that causing any interference later, right? Okay. So I'm back, and I'm going to talk about the House of Dragons, and specifically get into the dragons, like the origins of these dragons, like where these dragons come from, inside of George R.R. Martin's world, like, what kind of dragons are there? What do we see? Like, who are these dragons? And they are many. They are plentiful. One of my buddies really said to me the other day is like, yeah, you got a bunch of dragons. You're already going in the right direction, right? So I would say overall, they went in the right direction with this. You got a lot of dragons that have some commonality between them, but have a lot of variety between them as well. And we know the 19, Vagar, Caraxes, Cyrax, Meles, Damon's dragon. Oh, that was the other dragon. Drainfire, Sunfire, Tessarion, Vermax, Arcax, Arax, Stormcloud, Sea Smoke, Grey Ghost, Sheep Stealer, who we just saw live and direct, Morgul, Drogon, the Cannibal, and the Grey Girl, right? So you have a nice bevy of dragons. You got like 19 dragons overall, right? And that's doing some work on dragons, man. That's doing some work, considering that each one of these dragons has their own freaking personality, right? Like, they all kind of move in different directions. They all kind of have now they have some similarities, right? And we'll get into these. Now the notables among these is that Vagar is first always. This is Aemon's dragon, and he's the largest living dragon. And the thing that's significant about that is these dragons continue to age their entire life. So the older they are, they will often be massive. So that's kind of the reward for getting old, is that you get bigger and more likely to live. So it's going to be really tough. Then, of course, Caraxes, this is Damon's dragon, and this is called the Bloodworm. And this is like one of the most aggressive, like, fighting. This is he's considered like the perfect fighting dragon, which goes along with Damon himself, right? So we see these guys, and so we get a good understanding. Then there's, of course, there's Meles, and this is Rhaenyra's dragon. This is the Red Queen. This is one of the fastest dragons. Like, you're gonna notice, she's one of the fastest dragons out there, man. Like, she can't be touched. Now, Dreamfire, right? That is Dreamfire. Dreamfire is Helena's dragon. Now, this is an old female dragon, and the thing about it is, like, they really kind of fit, because she's not an aggressive dragon, right? Like, let's remember that about her. Dreamfire is very, like, connected. Thank you, Ray. So that's Dreamfire, and then you get to Vermax. Now that's Jaxie's dragon, who we just saw. Spoiler alert. I know you watched the first episode by now, so it's not a spoiler alert, right? So we know he's dead, right? So that was a dragon that we lost, and like that, it was a small dragon. Then, of course, there's Tyraxes. There is Moon Dragon, who's one of my favorite. Where's Moon Dragon up here, man? Where is Moon Dragon? Oh, somehow I left Moon Dragon out of here. Moon Dragon is like, that is the dragon of Baela Targaryen. Like, she's super fast. She's nice in the battle. We saw her on display in the most recent, in episode 1. So we got a lot with like dragons. You got Sea Smoke, right? This is a silver dragon. that later comes in. Like Sea Dragon is Sea Smoke is going to be relevant, like mad relevant. The Sea Snake, you have Sea Smoke, right? And then you got Silver Wings. So you got a whole like list of them down there. Everybody's up. Grey Ghost is a wild dragon. Drogon is at this point there's not. This is Drogon. I guess it's just a different Drogon than obviously Daenerys is Drogon, right? But he's kind of an unknown. So you have some dragons there on the fringe. And then we saw her pull in Sheep Stealer, right? Who this was just ridiculous. This was just ridiculous. And like Sheep Stealer shows us that, man, these dragons aren't just for play. You can't really order them around. Like they still have to choose. Even though you have the blood of the dragon in you, they can still look at you and be like, nah, son. And this is the case where, she gets on Sheep Stealer and Sheep Stealer just does whatever the frick Sheep Stealer wanted to do, right? That's what essentially went down. You were telling Sheep Stealer stuff, and it wasn't like he didn't hear you, right? It wasn't like he couldn't hear you. He was just like, nah, I'm not doing it, right? So this is kind of how we got to look at these dragons. Like we know about their level of intelligence, and it's pretty good. Like I'm going to talk about them as a species here as well, right? I am going to do that, but overall, like we see, there's a level of intelligence that has to be respected. They know what they're doing. They have agency. They decide when they want to partner up with somebody, and they decide when they don't. So out of this list here of 19, we got some powerhouse dragons here, talking about some of the fastest that we've seen from Westeros, and some of the largest that we've seen from Westeros. And I'm telling you guys, my favorites on this list, like I don't like Vhagar. Like Vhagar just seems like he's big and he's old, and maybe because he's rolling with Aemon, that I really don't like him. But obviously he's a gray, a dark gray Caraxi. So you see a lot of even like color separation among this dragon, because it's one species, and we'll talk about that, right? But you see like a lot of color variations between them. That's one thing that they're capable of, like grays, reds, greens, like blue, like they run the whole gamut, even though they're all the same, and they all sling fire. So for every single one of them, like but you get like you get like the different looks between them, like even up close, man. Like Sheep Stealer, man, like Sheep Stealer looked like a monster, man, to me. Like some of them, Sheep Stealer and Vhagar kind of look more like monsters to me, if I was really looking at, the mythology of it, right? But this is like a nice set. Like this is a well thought out bevy of dragons, and there's even some that are kind of on the fringe, like the Cannibal, where they got that name, and Grey Girl. So you got a couple of wild Grey Girl. You got a couple of wild dragons that are out there, right? And we don't have to guess much at Cannibal. Like he's a threat to everybody, right? And Grey Girl is said to be like very shy, like very elusive. And then it sounds like there's some unhatched eggs that are also around there, right? So there's 17 like dragons that are listed, 17 hatched. There's a couple of unhatched. There are a couple of bonds by fire. There's this is all power. This is all legacy. All these dragons are very important. Whether they're controlled and tamed or not, it's kind of the central point with these dragons. But Vhagar is definitely the biggest one. And I don't know that means that Caraxes can't deal with him. I don't know that. Because Caraxes is, right now the dominant. Like he's really the representation of Daemon. And I think he might have the speed and the agility and like the instincts to take down the big one. And then he's kind of reigning. Like I think Caraxes would love to do that, man, to be really, really honest. These dragons don't seem like they have really a bond to them. So all these dragons right here, like I said, you get the gamut on these dragons. Some of them are cool. Some of them have bonded with people. Some of them are rogue. All their intelligence is relatively the same. That's what we can say about these dragons. Okay. Now, when talking about again this entire world that George R.R. Martin built, like, man, this dude really killed it, man. I really got to tell you, to the depths at which he put in work on this series, man, because ordinarily I would talk about, like, his work is straight mythology now unto itself. Within his mythology, he has mythology, okay? And the mythologies are all about, where did these dragons come from? There's a lot of myths. There's at least 4 competing myths within Game of Thrones world of where dragons come from. So each of the worlds is kind of developed. Each of the cultures has kind of developed their own. This is what I think the world is, right? This is where we think dragons come from. Just like a religion, like for a lot of these, you guys can get that. For a lot of these cultures here, you would see why they worship dragons. Like clearly, Targaryens were like it's divine, all that stuff, right? So now I pull this together because I wanted to kind of go over this stuff for you guys, right? The dragons that we're talking about, like the cliques that we're talking about here, right? So let's get so there's multiple origins of the dragons, right? The first one is the Valerian tradition. Like so they have their own myth of the dragon. So there's 4 competing myths within George R. Martin's world, right? That's the significant part, right? There's 4 different. Okay. So because we're talking about we're talking about like centuries and centuries of history, like thousands of years of history. Dragons have existed, right? There's stories about like who were the first people to tame them, how they were created, all that stuff. Like history goes. So dragons have existed for thousands of years. They were first tamed by ancient peoples. The Valerians became the most famous of the dragon lords, okay? But they are not the only ones. Dragons lay eggs, right? This is what the mythology tells us about it, right? They grow throughout their lives and they can bond with humans. This is what we know about dragons. Dragons can still exist without humans being around. They don't really need us, right? Now, why are there so? We've got 4 stories, right? I'm going to break down 4 different mythologies for you guys. There's Valerian tradition, there's the Asha'i tradition, the Corthine legend, and Septon Brass theory, right? All these are competing. Why are there so many different? Because this is how he wrote it. Like he allowed growth within that, but like the level of depth to which he's developing this role should be studied. And you know, I guess that's why I'm doing it. The depth that he went to on developing this mythology is shocking, right? So let's get further into it, right? And there's so many histories about how dragons got created because it's always at war over there. Somebody writes a myth, and somebody else comes in, defeats them. Now you got a whole different set of myths, right? But sometimes the myths survive. Okay. So let's look at these. Like I'm looking at these right now. Like the Valerian myth of tradition, the 14 flames. They believe that dragons are native to volcanic islands of the 14th flames, right? So this is a Valerian tradition. The dragons were discovered in caves and lairs, and through blood magic and mastery, they were tamed. Okay, so magic's integral in this from the Valerian standpoint, right? Okay. Now, some Valerian texts claim a blood bond between dragons and the dragon lords, which is why they're like, yeah, we got blood. We have the blood of the dragon all in us, right? This is where this comes from. And this is a story that's taught in Valerian schools and passed down throughout House Targaryen, right? So they believe this. Whether there's actually dragon blood in there, I don't know. But this is actually what the Targaryen says about dragons, where they come from, why they're into, okay? But the Asha'i tradition, the Shadowlands, this is an even older mythology, right? And they claim that dragons were first tamed in the east in the ancient Shadowlands, okay? Dig that. And then dragons vanished long before these dragon lords vanished. So they believe that the Valerians are the inheritors of this, not the creators of it. And their history speaks of ancient empires that predate Valeria itself. So, right, so this is a competing mythology about the same dragons, right? Now, the Corthine legend is that the moon cracked. This is one of the most interesting ones. That sailors tell a story of the 2 moons and the birth of dragons, right? This is a great mythology, guys. Like, just tune in and just soak this one up. This is some great mythology. Right? Once 2 moons hung in the sky, and one wandered too close to the sun and cracked open, all right? From the cracked moon came fire made flesh, dragons. And this is a tale about wonder, it's myth, why they believe it as that this is a mythical story that has passed down, right, through generations of storytellers and like, you know, dreamers, dream seers. So this is some ancient, like this is like the 3rd competing mythology of where dragons come from in George R. R. Martin's world, right? And the last one we're going to talk about right there is Septon Barth's theory, which they are unnatural creatures. His theory really kind of snags you a little bit, right? Like, he proposed a more unsettling idea that dragons were not born, but dragons were made. Like, this is where he's coming at, right? I wish I had some scary music to play right now. And he theorized that dragons were created through blood magic by blending various creatures together. This is scary, right? This is some scary stuff here. Fireworms may have been the base, but worms or other beasts have been used. And his work was banned. And people believe it's because he got so close to the truth, right? Like, he's actually speaking the truth. And why did he believe all this? Because he studied the creatures, he studied magic, and he studied all this forbidden stuff. So he was putting it all together, right? So this is like the four major competing mythologies within Game of Thrones about where dragons come from, right? So if you're watching House of Dragons and you're like, where these dragons come from? Well, okay, I'm giving you the four mythologies of where it came from. Which one's the truth? I don't think it even matters, right? Like, George R. R. Martin never actually revealed it, but I think somewhere within these, like, who knows? Maybe one of these. If I had to choose one, man, I'm going with the High Sept, man. Wait, who am I going with? I don't know. Do I believe they were created in the Shadowlands? Yes, I do. I think that's very pliable, right? The Ashai tradition, right? Shadowlands tradition. I think that's very possible. Do I believe the Valerian tradition that they came from caves and lairs? That actually sounds pretty good too. Like, they're talking about some blood magic, right? They're talking about some blood magic, and Sept Barth is also talking about some blood magic. So I think blood magic is at the core of what's going on here. I think we can accept blood magic is at the core of dragons, right? So at least in Valerian style. And these guys come out like they're before history. They've always been here. This is before history. They're here during ancient times. They're there during the Valerian Rise. They're there during the Doom. They're there during the Age of Kings and Heroes, the Dance of Dragons, and whatever is going on, right? I think we're in the Dance of Dragons right now. I don't know where we're at. I think we're in the Dance of Dragons. But this is basically what you get from, this civilization, like how they break out dragons, right? And they got a couple of different styles. Like, in other dragon stories, all these are kind of different. But we see the dragon eggs always kind of look similar. You get a lot of different types of, like, dragon looks, right? Like, let's be real about it. The dragons really, really got the whole variety and stuff like that. That's the origin. Like, this is where they're saying, per all the myths of Game of Thrones itself, from the various houses, various people, these are the four competing myths of where these guys come from. Okay. Now, I would say this. The people I believe the least. Okay, I believe the least in the Valerians, because I believe the Valerians will say anything. I don't think there's anything the Valerians wouldn't do to justify their own nonsense. Okay, I don't believe that. So the Valerians, I trust you guys the least, and I trust the High Sept the most, right? Because I think there's going to be some actual research that went down with that. But I do have to say, okay, both of them having blood magic right off the bat, it's like, yeah, there's some blood magic going on here, right? That's a significant thing. So George R. R. Martin, like, really, really let it simmer when he came out with how the civilizations with itself kind of came together, like how it was interpreted, right? So what he's kind of given us is like competing religions, right? Competing historians, myths, propaganda, right? Like, that's the thing. He's never told you the answer, which is kind of insidious, man. It's kind of wicked, that you could be digging for something in his story and it's literally not even there, right? It's not even there. But overall, like, the stories seem like overwhelmingly we see at least a curiosity about blood magic, which is probably going to require a little bit more investigation on my part, and I'll figure out where this blood magic really gets in here. And we could see they all look different. Like, Caraxes looks different from Sunfire. He's got those brilliant gold scales. Like, Meles is lean, like, fast. So they get diversity in there, but they're all pretty much the same. They have some core traits of, like, what they are: continuous growing, egg production, like similar intelligence, and like social behaviors. They can trip, right? Like, they literally can. So let's kind of fine tune it a little bit, right? Like, let me get a little sip. I'm gonna fine tune this here for you guys, right? So what we also know from Game of Thrones, right, is that there's one type of dragon. They're all the same. They're all the same type of dragon, right? These aren't different dragons, all right? These aren't different dragons. They're all from the same family. This is a reptilian vertebrate, from what we can tell. Dragon forms, like they're all in one family of dragons. Okay. There's not, even though they have great variety, like we see great variety in their size and all that, right? They have a lot of common. Like their color spectrum is even common among all of them. Their lengths can vary. Like hatchlings can be like 2 feet to 4 feet long. I mean, they're already coming out the gate, nice size, right? Size of a small human already. Young dragons are considered, that 10 feet to 30 feet. Mature dragons are often, 40 to 80 feet long. And Vagar is so big, they don't know how big Vagar is because nobody's going to measure this motherfucker, right? Like, that's the whole thing. Like, nobody's going to measure Vagar, right? So they continually grow throughout their lives. They don't max out. How much these guys weigh, man, it can get insane. Like hatchlings, maybe you saw them when Daenerys first had hers. You could kind of hold them in your hand like a small dog, like a 20-pound dog or something like that, right? But they quickly get several hundred pounds juveniles. As adults, they're already going to weigh several tons, right? Where the ancient ones, like where does Vagar land in that? Like, who knows, man? 20 tons, 50 tons, like this thing's massive. He's like a flying actual city, right? And their lifespan, as we can tell, can be several centuries, right? Like they don't really know, right? But and the ancient dragons, man, like the ancient dragons, it said that they were large enough to carry armored riders and destroy stone structures, right? Just off of their massive size. So the older ones were even, and they show some of the old skulls, right, beneath the red keep. Now we know that Balerion lived for at least 200 years, right? Vagar is said to be somewhere around 180 years old. So we don't really have a strong confirmation on like how old they get. We can see it can be centuries, right? We can measure that, okay? Now their body plan is all kind of the same. Like this is what we can count on from these dragons, right? They're gonna have 4 legs and they're gonna have 2 wings. This is standard for all these dragons, and that's important in terms of like dragonology, right? Like if we get into our dragonology, this always matters, right? They're going to have long necks. They're going to have a long tail. They're going to have large horns. They're going to have very powerful jaw structures. They're going to have fire-producing organs, okay? Now, we don't know what the mechanism is for these dragons, but we do know that they are going to have some type of fire-producing organs consistently all across all of them, meaning they will burn you up, right? That's consistent. They're going to have thick scales. Now, we're seeing that their scales can be pierced by human weaponry, right? Where we saw in Lord of the Rings, it's very different with Smaug, man. He had to have a chink of armor actually missing, okay? They have clawed feet, okay? So his dragons all have basically 6 limbs, 4 wings, 4 legs plus 2 wings, and a lot of other mythologies treat 4 limbs as wings, right? Like they may have variations on it. We can see the color variation. Like it's highly visible that they all have different shades of melanin popping off over there, right? You got the black, you got the bronze, you got the red, you got the gold, silver, cream colored, right? Blue and green, right? So you got a lot of eye candy among all these various types of dragons. And there's no information to suggest that any color would be representative of size or like growth patterns or anything like that. That there don't seem to be any differences between like the various between this one species. Everybody's the same. Might look a little different, but they're all basically the same clan. They're all repping the same clan. Okay. Now there's sexual dimorphs, right? So you have very clear. You have male and female dragons. We don't know if there's any dramatically different behaviors internally on what they have, right? We know that the females lay eggs. We've seen Dreamfire, Cyrax, Silver Rings, and we've seen that they have a flexible biology in terms of humans. So things can change, maybe with reptilian kind of core. What they're able to do biology wise may be more flexible, and George R. R. Martin has actually kind of hinted at that. Like he's made some statements about like the sexuality or genders. I guess you're gender fluid, man. I guess it's something we're gonna have to accept about it. Is like they're probably gender fluid, right? If we really get down to it, they're reptilian based, so we know this. Okay. So how smart are these dragons? That's always an important question, right? And we're gonna compare the intelligence of these dragons to some other dragons, right? They're clearly high standards, right? They remember commands, they recognize individual humans, they learn routes and map, not maps, but yeah, routes. They display curiosity, they display affection. Clearly they get mad, right? Clearly they have a full range of getting mad, right? They have actual hunting strategies. They themselves have shown fear. They can, defend their riders. Like they don't show that they have a language, even among dragons. We don't know if, I'm sure it's got to be some kind of communication tool, but we've never seen a structure to how the dragons actually communicate. Like we don't see that. I don't know if means anything. I have no idea, right? Because they haven't shown us that. But we know that they understand language because they all understand what is it? Draxes, right? Right? Fire, burn them up, right? Jakaris, there it is, right? Every single one of these guys, the first thing they learn is what Jakaris means. Jakaris, burn it up. Every single one of them gets that. So they understand language. They understand context, right? Like even Tyrion. Tyrion was able to go to I can't remember maybe it was Drogon when Daenerys was missing, and he was like, "Look, you got to go find her. All right, she out there. We don't know where she is. You got to go get her." And he understood that, right? So we see where they're until now. These dragons aren't going to be like casting spells or anything. These guys aren't coming up with complex ideas on their own, right? They're just kind of like feed me, I eat, I'll take you, like whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like they're smart, man. They're not going over the top with these guys, right? They don't have any symbolic language, right? Their diet is just like, yeah, where's it at? That's basically what their diet is: sheep, goats, cattle, horses, deer, fish, meat, whatever. I'm hungry, and if you look like you get burnt up and taste good, there we go. That's basically all we need, right? So these are large dragons. They consume massive amounts of meat. So I don't even know how they're keeping. I don't know how they're keeping the old dragon around. Like Vagar, how much does it take to feed Vagar? I mean, like, I don't think they're actually accounting for it. I think that's a weakness in the series that you guys aren't accounting for how much Vagar would have to eat, right? You don't have enough. That's why the Megalodon couldn't exist anymore. We don't have enough food, right? You run out of food. Now, all these dragons prefer like the same kind of habitat. They prefer like volcanic regions, so they do have an affinity for that. Rocky cliffs. They like coastal mountains. They like large open skyways, like so they can fly and swoop out, right? And whether it's heat or heat also seems to be beneficial, but not necessary, right? I don't know if it helps to regulate. So the kind of places they like, Dragonstone, like clearly Dragon, it's got Dragon and Stone right in the title, right? The 14 flames, okay, clearly the flames, right? We get that's a range of volcanoes, literally, and Dragonmont, right? So all these things, like they love places named Dragon already too. That's a big thing. But they love like those rocky environments, and they love like where they can float. Like, come on, these guys love it, man. They're loving every bit of it. Reproduction, like this is what we know. They lay eggs. The eggs require warmth. The hatchlings imprint strongly on humans when they are raised by them. That's very, very important how they psychologically can bond. And wild dragons can still reproduce, independently. Wild dragons, obviously, they're doing their own thing, man. They're making it happen, man. Right. And the Targaryens, like a lot of Targaryens, they would actually place dragon eggs in the cradles with newborn babies because they want them. They figure like they could get a connection going to have them bond even better as they're developing together, right? Get their wills more linked together. So they put a lot of lore into like how they communicate it and raise dragons. And dragon, like their growth, it can vary based on the age and just like food availability, how much free, like they're like, kind of big fish. Like the more room they have to grow, the more like space. Obviously, they're gonna get larger. They have no real like restraints on how big they can get. Now, behavior wise, like they're dragons. Like they're kind of classic dragons to me. They're territorial. These guys are apex predators. These guys are highly food motivated. Like they are extremely highly and definitely motivated by food, right? They're very socially tolerant towards other dragons, right? They're extremely defensive of their riders when they do make a bond, but they're capable of recognizing other familiar people. They know other people, and they can even read circumstances. They seem like they're a little bit intuitive as well. And as far as their structure, like they don't really have a structure. They're not really pack animals. They're not like that. Like they're actually kind of mostly solitary. All of them. Like they're brought together by the Targaryens or whoever, dragon riders. They're brought together by that. But after the riders go away, the dragons don't kick it. Like you never see dragons like kicking like, oh, what's up, Chad? Oh, right on. Thank you, sir, for popping in on my YouTube. Definitely appreciate it. Definitely appreciate it. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So all the dragons have those similarities, right? They're going to compete for food. Like that's why they don't really like being around each other. Like sometimes they share nesting areas, but it's kind of like it's a condo. You got a room, you got a spot over here, I got a spot over here. They're never on the same team. Like these dragons are never like down together, right? And as far as how they move about, these guys walk, they run, they can climb rocky terrain, they soar, they can hover, they can dive at high speeds, they can swim. Some adaptation of dragons have shown the ability to swim, and they're natural weapons. This is where it really gets to it, right? It's always their fire breath is their number one. This is their go-to. Like it would be mine too. It's a great weapon. Then you got their teeth, you have their horns, their claws, their tails can make massive strikes, and then they just have immense bodies. Like these guys are big. These are huge guys. Their weaknesses is always in their wing membrane can be damaged. Their eyes, of course, like everyone else, are still vulnerable. Their necks can be injured because they have these long necks. And other dragons are the greatest threat. Like the main way you probably gonna die if you're a dragon is from a dragon, right? I mean, look, I'm not lying, man. This dragon on dragon crime is completely out of control. Like that's the highest probability of ending your life. Otherwise, you just get older and bigger. And it's a reason there's not a lot of Vhagar's out there because they got killed probably by Vhagar, right? Like that's probably what happened because you can't, what else is gonna happen? You guys are gonna compete for territory. You getting too big. So yeah, that's essentially it, man. That's essentially how they stack up. And I think overall, like we see that consistency, like how long they live, and it's not too many over 100 ones. So they must be killing each other at a pretty good rate, man. Like there's been some ups and downs in the population, but overall we can see like, man, it's a very, very tight mythology of dragons that he's built. And I definitely like it. But the last thing I want to go over too is I consider myself a bit of a dragonologist, man. I'm not gonna lie, man. I've been reading on dragons for a long time. And the other thing is like comparing them to other dragon mythologies, like gives us a little greater insight into what he was doing as well. Like I love this. I love this idea of comparing dragon worlds. Let me see if I can get this one up here. Okay. All right. Now, the other worlds that I'm looking at on this one are Dragonlance and Tolkien's world. Like both, obviously, these worlds also have dragons pretty extensively, right? We know this, right? So I wanted to take a look at each of these and see how they're different and how their dragons are similar. Kind of gets a little more insight into, Tolkien's mythology as well. So if we look at these and we compare them, we say, okay, Song of Ice and Fire dragons, Lord of the Ring dragons, Dragonland dragons. Okay. Now, Tolkien comes with dragons as just living creatures. They are biological beings with magical traits. They eat, they age, they reproduce, and they form deep bonds with riders. They are powerful, but they are not omnipotent. Now, compare that to Lord of the Rings, right? Like Lord of the Rings dragons. This is Tolkien's work. Dragons are innately instruments of evil. This is very important, right? Tolkien fundamentally defines dragons as different than what George R. R. Martin does. They're a completely different thing. They're not relatable, okay? Tolkien says that dragons were created or corrupted by Morgoth. They are highly intelligent, they speak, they manipulate, and they serve as servants of darkness and ancient weapons. So this is completely different, right? Okay, so their genesis is absolutely different. Now, with the Dragonlance, like dragons are almost like people in Dragonlance's world. This is Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman's world, where dragons have their own culture. Dragons are highly intelligent. They form civilizations. They function within families. They have politics and alliances, and they're active participants in the world, almost as equal partners in the world. That's kind of the crazy thing about these three visions. So we've got a whole like kind of spectrum on where they come from, right? Like their key traits. They have some similarities, like all dragons kind of descend from one ancient line, per George R. R. Martin. They have the same type of diets, they reproduce the same. But on these, we start seeing some very fundamental differences here, okay? So when we look at George R. R. Martin's, let's talk about intelligence. So George R. R. Martin's really lists dragons as highly intelligent animals. It's probably where they're maxed out, right? Like they're capable of understanding, but you're not really going to conversate with them. Like they don't understand what you're saying when you're talking, right? Outside of Jakari's, right? That they don't really understand anything else. Now, if I compare that to Tolkien, they're smarter than humans. Like they're cunning. I believe Smaug was probably more smarter than everybody else. I think he knew that, right? So higher intelligence, like they're often ancient beings, so they can be very, very wise, right? That's very different than what George R. R. Martin's doing. And in Dragonlance, they're also human level or higher. They can be scholars and rulers. Now, in George R. R. Martin's world, of course, it reflects because they don't communicate. Like they're just kind of like emotional. They right when they want something, and it's action. Whereas Tolkien's, they're more fluid in language. They can converse. They can be deceptive, right? And in Dragonlance, man, they have complex languages and complex communications themselves. Now, in George R. R. Martin's world, of course, their origins is kind of mysterious. In Tolkien's world, he says they were created by Morgoth in the First Age as weapons of war and terror. So that's what he says they 100% fundamentally are. In Dragonlance, they're born of magic and the gods. They're part of the world's like cosmic balance, right? They're an integral part. They all seem to be like lay eggs, right? All of them can kind of bond with humans. Let's see. George R. R. Martin's obviously will bond with humans. Yeah, Tolkien's, they don't really seem like they be having riders in Tolkien's world, right? They're seekers of power themselves and domination. And in Dragonlance, they can form alliances. They have so they can do the same thing. They will select riders as well. So we can kind of see that. Now they all seem to lay eggs, although Tolkien doesn't really get into it very much. So his reproduction for his dragons are vague, but the other two definitely say that they lay eggs, and that's kind of the primary reproduction tool there. Tolkien's don't have, George R. R. Martin, they don't have a culture among themselves. They're kind of more solitary, so they don't really kick it. Same thing with Lord of the Rings. They have no culture. The Dragonlance ones are definitely different in that style. George R. R. Martin's, they're not inherently anything. They can be good or they can be bad. They're just whatever. I just want to eat. Whereas Tolkien is saying that dragons are inherently evil, and all of them are bad. Dragonlance, it's more, the metallic ones are more favored to be good. The chromatic ones are going to be, the reds, the blues are going to be more, you're probably going to be evil. I don't know how that lines up. Now, with each of them, magic is a part of their creation. For George R. R. Martin, magic is part of their biology and their bond with their actual writers. With Tolkien, dragons are magical beings themselves, and the same thing for dragon lands. So you got some good examples. Like these dragons are pretty diverse, man. Like they're actually massively, massively diverse just in how they even talk about dragons. So I wanted to break it down for you guys. Like if you missed any part of it, it'll be for upload because I'm telling you, we get into like the origin stories. If you're trying to really get a grasp on what House of Dragons is all about, like I'm just putting you up on game on like a lot of the dragon lore, how the dragons come about, where the dragons come from, why the dragons move the way they do, what can you reasonably expect from this level of dragon? Like, are they gonna be wild? Like, is someone like Sheep Stealer gonna be off the hook? Yeah. I'm not even surprised. Sorry, I'm surprised it took that long. So that's kind of what we have to navigate as we understand the series. I hope this will be some useful information for you. And I'm gonna go ahead and dip. I think I gave a nice 40 minutes of a cooking session on dragons, which I love talking about. And I'll have this stuff kind of broken down, uploaded. But man, if there's any other topics you guys want to hit me up about, I'm also gonna make all these like info charts available on the page or on my social media. So if you want to check those out, as always, please do so. But otherwise, I'm about to dip. Appreciate you guys for stopping in, getting supporting the channel.